Welcome to the Intimacy Lab. I'm Michelle Renee, an intimacy guide, surrogate partner, and professional cuddler. We're here to talk about intimacy in a much broader view than what you're probably thinking. Most people think about intimacy as sex. We're going to break that apart here. Welcome to the lab. Welcome back to the Intimacy Lab. I am so excited today because I have someone who I would have said was a colleague and now is a friend and colleague, because I don't know how to not have dual relationships. I think I did in my life is that um, I don't know how to not be friends with the people that I work closely with. It's just kind of who I am. So anyways, today I'm here with Vanessa Cushing, who we worked together on a case. Well, I guess we've worked together on a couple of cases a little bit
Mhm.
um, over the last couple years now, I
Yeah,
think.
I think
Uh,
like 2 years, maybe
time
longer?
is time is weird. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's been a while. And when our last case ended, it was kind of this, I don't want to not talk to you. And
Mhm.
so we just put like regular like meetings on our calendar so that we can stay in touch. So
Yeah.
um Vanessa was so nice to accidentally schedule this interview on my birthday, and we talked about canceling it. I was like, "No, I think this would be such a lovely birthday gift to myself to just kind of get to talk about the thing I love and, throw in some words of affirmation on top of it, and I'm a happy camper." So, um, Vanessa, do you wanna let everybody know who you are, what you do, and where you are?
Yes, absolutely, and happy, happy, happy birthday, Michelle. You are a very
Yay.
special person, deserve the best day. Yes, so I am currently located in Miami, and I am licensed in both Florida and Virginia, and then I am the owner of Cushing Counseling, the private practice I started in March. And I predominantly do trauma and sex therapy, and I am a sexual trauma specialist.
So we have a couple things we have to do before we dive in to our conversation today. One of them is this is going to drop on Friday, November. What is the date? The 3rd,
Right
and
before Soft Cock Week.
right before Soft Cock Week, which I have recorded, I think 7 really
Ooh.
rich conversations, and everybody can go find it over on the Soft Cock Week podcast. They're not going to be here on this channel. They'll be on the Soft Cock Week podcast. And I'm just putting out interviews during the week of Soft Cock Week, and then that podcast will sit dormant unless I have like a pop-up surprise cock or something. I don't know, like a surprise erection. Um we'll throw out a surprise episode once in a while, maybe, but it'll be a surprise. So I don't have to make any promises either way. But the other thing I want to do, and I kind of did this solo on my last episode, was bring in a "we're not really strangers" question,
Your favorite game.
my favorite game.
Hmm.
So before we started recording, I picked out 3 cards, one out of each level, and asked Vanessa to pick the one that we would answer today. So today's question is, and I'll let you decide which one of us answers first. How's that sound?
You always put the ball in my court, and I always give it back to you.
Okay, well, choice is
So
important.
choice is important. I honestly, you can go first.
Okay. I'm happy to do that. I don't think it's a 50-50. Like it's a win-win.
Yes, it is. We'll both go.
Okay. The question is, have you ever told someone I love you but didn't mean it? And if so, why? And this is a complicated question because it really, I think, puts the pressure on what does love mean,
Mm.
because the the idea that came to mind is it's nuanced, right? There's never, I feel like I live in gray everywhere, and I think I don't know, I don't know if black and white really exist, at least after a while. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um the thought that came to mind, and I'll explain why I say this, why it's questionable on the definition of love. Excuse me. My ex-husband, my first husband, um, there was a routine to I love yous. It was expected.
Mm,
It was overused, so it was very diluted, and I wasn't in. I didn't have. I don't know if it's autonomy or there was an expectation because of, I'm gonna say, his insecurity, right? He needed
mhm,
to hear those words, and it was like a soother, right? And if you didn't say it, then something was wrong. So I said it a lot out of obligation to say it because the emotional paperwork of not saying it was higher
mhm.
than being honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, the truth of the matter is, I still love that man. Like,
Mhm,
we have a long history together, right? I care about him, and for me, love is about care,
mhm,
and I don't hate him, and I would never wanna be in that kind of relationship again with him,
mhm,
but I do hold a lot of care for him. He's known me longer than a lot of people in my life. He's been through, if I made a list of, the really hard things that happen in adulthood, like those devastating things, he's been through most of them with me. But did I say it when I didn't mean it? I said it when I was supposed to say it, not when
mhm,
I felt it.
mhm.
And I think that's my nuanced answer to it. And so why? Because it felt like an obligation. I felt pressured
Yeah.
to say it.
And that makes a lot of sense, Michelle. I feel like what you're talking about, I feel like a lot of people and a lot of couples and even like people like with family, like it's part of the routine. Like, okay, every time you get off the phone, okay, love you, bye. Like that's always part of the routine, even if you don't feel it. And I feel like if you don't say it, the other person feels some kind of way. They feel
Mhm.
insecure. They might feel like you might be abandoning them. Like I feel like that is so prevalent and it's a really good point because like you can always love that person and feel like care to them, but you might not feel love in that moment. Like maybe you're mad, maybe you got in a fight and like the phone call ends and you don't say I love you, like that causes problems in the relationship.
It reminds me of, in the Wheel of Consent, we talk about direct pleasure versus indirect pleasure.
Mhm.
And it makes me ask the question, or it makes me want to put the question out to the audience in, why are you saying I love you? Is it to hear it back, or is it to
Yeah.
express yourself?
You posted something on Instagram very recently and it really stuck with me and I loved it. It's like, do not love someone because you want to be loved back. Love because you love. And that really
Mhm.
resonated with me because I think a lot of people say, I love you, hoping to hear it back. But I think when you get to a place where you can say, I love you and just express your love and not need to hear it back, that's a really like important place to be, and I think it's hard to get there. But I think that's kind of where I'm at. Like I say I love you to a lot of people, but I
Mhm.
don't need to hear it back. I think when I
Yeah.
was younger, I needed to hear it back. I needed that. But now I'm at a
Yeah.
place where I can love unconditionally and like I don't need to hear that back all the time.
Yeah, it's a maturity, it seems, 'cause
Yeah.
it definitely, um, correlates with, how my emotional maturity has changed.
Mhm.
And I can tell you, I say I love you a lot. I spread that shit
Me
around. It is free,
too.
right? And I say it to a lot of clients, and I say it because I feel like, I think for a little while, I felt like it would be inappropriate to say it because what does it mean to them? But
Yeah.
yeah, I realized that when I went ahead and took the risk to say it, the person on the other side of it just was like, "I just don't get to hear that very often." And it
Mhm.
meant a lot to them. And
Yeah.
so, I've kind of taken it from a place of, if I say it and I get any kind of confusion or discomfort or whatever, I look at it as an opportunity to talk about it and what
Mhm.
that word means to me. And if I have a client that is profusely giving me I love yous, I use it as an opportunity to talk about what does it mean to them? What is it about me that they love?
Mhm.
Right? And it just seems like a great opportunity to help
That's
them
something
spread more love.
I love about you and your work is like you take everything as an opportunity to explore and dig deeper. It's like, okay, wait, let's take a step back. Like, what does this mean for you? And like
Mhm.
digging into like that uncomfortability. And that's something like a lot of even like therapists don't do. They like, okay, like we kind of skip over it and then we go to the next thing because it kind of makes the therapist uncomfortable too because there is uncomfortability in digging into that like even for yourself and like the other person in the situation might not feel like super secure in that moment but like after that work is done like there's no connection like that.
I have to tell you, I wasn't always good at it, Vanessa. I this is
I
something
don't
I
believe
work
you.
on. No, no, no. I mean, okay, so I've always in my work have been really comfortable being like joining with a client, like sharing a lot of
Yeah.
my own personal experience. But I was digging in a while back. I was working with a friend, I say friend, an acquaintance, somebody that I've been connected to here in San Diego, who does coaches around storytelling and things like that. His name is Nathan Young. Give him a shout out. I'll put him in the notes.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to him I wanted to tell my story better.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I feel like clients really resonate with my story. That's what I hope at least is that's why they come to me is they find my story
Mm-hmm.
somewhere and they go, "Oh, Michelle gets it, blah blah blah." And so I reached out to him to kind of start figuring out how I wanted to tell that story. And and as I started to really like think about my past and how it shows up, I had this moment where I went, "Oh shit, I really struggle to ask more curious questions of my clients, and it's because questions were not safe when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It was not safe to have people ask questions about our household. It was not safe
Mm-hmm.
to ask questions of other people. Um, and so I remember one of my early like memories of my now ex-husband when we were dating of really seeing this in retrospective, like, wow, I thought that was rude to ask questions. And
Mm-hmm.
all he was doing was asking more questions about my grandmother's experience that she was sharing. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, why are you being so rude? Like, that was the kind of the
Mm-hmm.
messaging that I had. So I still struggle with this. I love that you think that I've got this thing tied up, right? But I still struggle with it. It's something I have to
Amazing.
practice. I have to remind myself to go a little deeper, and I watched my colleagues who do it really well, and I think I wanna be more like them. And
That's how I
so,
feel about you.
yeah, so it's just we keep paying it forward, and
Mm-hmm.
we surround ourselves with people that bring us up to another level,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kinda like my long answer. So, enough about me, Vanessa. Um, how would you answer the question, have you ever told someone that you love them but didn't mean it?
I think you bring up a really good point about routine and like saying it because the other person is saying it. The first thing I'll say is I also throw I love you around there because like I genuinely feel a lot of love and a lot of different kinds of love for many people in my life. I think it for therapists, I think it is a boundary like to say I love you to a client, even though like I have felt a lot of love to a client. I don't know if I would ever say I love you to a client and I don't know why. I think I should probably explore that a little bit and I should explore like the ethics and boundaries around that for therapists telling clients I love you because I do feel a lot of love for them. I also like to practice radical honesty is like that's something in my core that I find really fulfilling for me and like for my clients too. Like I'm 100% genuinely authentically myself 100% of the time and I don't lie. Um, and I tell my clients that because I think it's really important. So when I say I love you, I genuinely mean it. But you do bring up a good point in like routine and like phone calls. Like, for example, with my mom, like we talk on the phone often, and sometimes we'll get into a fight, and like I won't actively feel that love. Like, I'll feel anger and I'll feel sadness and I'll feel pain. But like at the end of the phone call, I always say, like, love you, bye. Like, even when I'm angry, I'll say, love you, bye. And like, I think if I didn't say it, my mom would be very hurt. And I do love my mom. Like, I always will love my mom, but in those moments, I don't feel that love. And, like, maybe that's not, like, I don't know. It's a conflicting feeling for me because I do love her, but in those moments, I don't feel the love.
Yeah, I mean, I think an overarching "I care about you" versus "I'm actively loving you right now," or
Yeah.
loving how you're presenting right now, or loving how I'm interacting with you right now isn't always congruent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that I think was a wonderful kickoff.
Yes.
I could do whole
We,
episodes just off of pulling a card.
I think you could. The cards are so good. But
Yeah.
some people feel very uncomfortable with the cards. I've done the cards with other people, and other people don't like the cards.
Yeah, did I talk about that on my podcast yet? I talked about the fact that I brought these
With
into my
you.
wedding reception, right? But, yeah, some of the initial responses from people was like, "Fuck you and fuck these cards," right? Because it brought up a lot of feelings for people,
Yeah.
and for some of those people, I got follow-up messages that was like, "Actually, I know I hated the cards at first, but it really started really powerful conversations in my relationship, and I just that was good, right?" And
Mhm.
so, a little discomfort isn't always bad. We have
No,
to
it's not.
stretch. We have to stretch, and, I go back to the 36 Questions to Fall in Love that was in
Love
New York
those.
Times back in the day. I think it was maybe 2014, 2015, and the study there was that they gave these questions to people that were on their, like, first date, newly dating,
Mhm.
and the people that went through those questions had a much higher, rate of continuing to date, like,
Mhm.
the vulnerability was a connector, and
Mhm.
it built intimacy, it built emotional intimacy, and that's what connects people together. I mean,
Yep.
we don't really pick people just based on a checklist of you meet these certain criteria. It's really about what is the reason we're together? Like, do we have this mutuality
Mhm.
of a purpose or shared experience? A lot of it's I love your heart,
Yeah.
right? Where you've
Connection.
come from to get to where you are. I see your strength, these
You see
different
the
qualities.
person and all of the person.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we gotta share it for people to find out, and that's the
I know.
scary part, and I know it's like I wanna be like, "It's so easy," and it is for me, usually, um, but it I know it's a learned muscle, and you gotta
It's
try it and realize that the benefit is worth the
the
fear.
risk. Yeah.
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 Alright. Oh, so today Vanessa and I are gonna talk about our experience in working together. There's something called the triadic model, which means that primarily my work, it means that we have a talk therapist, a
Mhm.
client, and me,
Mhm.
right? Whether I'm working as a professional cuddler or a surrogate partner or whatever space in between, some kind of intimacy coaching, I'm the touch person, right?
Mhm.
And my client has the talk person,
Mhm.
and we all talk together and work as a team between all three of us to collaborate around the whatever the goals are for the client.
Mhm.
And so, um, Vanessa and I have shared a couple of clients,
Mhm.
and like I said, I guess I said that in the beginning. And we've stayed talking, and now we talk about all sorts of things, not just what's going on with our clients.
Things that going
um,
on in our personal lives, anything, really.
yeah, yeah, we kind of I don't know,
It's awesome.
support each other. Just
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm borrowing these questions from my colleague Andrew Hartman, who is a surrogate partner up in the Bay Area around San Francisco. And we have been throwing it together, like toying around with this project that we want to do. But my plate has been really full between wedding this year, presenting at ASEC this year, finishing moving across the country this year. They just keep adding up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Soft cock week. Okay. So maybe come the first of the year, I also have to create a new certification for cuddlist. Um,
Oh.
Andrew and I are going to start this project where we talk to therapists that have worked with us
Mm-hmm.
to get their experience, because a lot of times from my end, I feel like the Avon lady where I'm like, knock, knock, I want to sell you my product. And it doesn't always feel good to be always like pushing myself without, like, it'd be better to have a client with me saying yes, or a customer, I love the lipstick, it's fantastic, right? Like, I we need to broaden the conversation around, it's not just the client's experience, it's not just my experience, it's also your experience.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I wish that wasn't the case. Like with surrogate partner work is like, okay, like this is what like selling like telling like clients what you can do for them, a therapist like what you can do for them. Because honestly, a surrogate partner can do more than a sex therapist in a matter of 1 or 2 sessions. Because like we cannot touch our clients, but you can actually go in there and like fix the problem. Like, I can't do that. We can talk about the problem all day, all night, for weeks and weeks on end. But at the end of the day, Michelle, you are in such a unique position to go in with the client and fix that problem. And that's something we can never do.
I
So,
want to
like,
pause you. I want to pause you. I get really uncomfortable with the word fix. So I want to
I
like,
know, serve is
can we
better.
dive into that just a little bit? I get to go in and maybe touch the problem or
I
expose
like
the
that.
problem, right? Or
Expose the problem.
whatever the thing is that's happening that we haven't been able, or you guys haven't been able to really either clarify, or like memory reconsolidation, like whatever it is that needs to happen so that the client can move forward.
Hmm.
I get to go in and interact with where they're stuck. I'll say
Yeah.
interact,
Interact is a better
right?
word. You're right. I don't like the word fix either. But there are things that you can do that, like, I can't. Like, and it's
Absolutely.
hard. Like in some problems that the client has that they want to be what is a good word for it, like I don't know what a good word is for it, but like there's some problems that like we can't delve into. Like there are things in like the real world that we cannot delve into, that like you have the power and opportunity to delve into with them. And I think that's really powerful work.
Yeah, I remember being at my first psych networker conference in 2019. A few, Madeline Guanazo, the co-founder of Cuddlist, myself at the time I was operations manager, and Mariam Brown, one of our Cuddlists. We went to this conference kind of in like a guerrilla marketing kind of way of
Mhm.
like, we're just going to buy tickets, come in with our Cuddlist swag on, and try to start some conversations with clinicians to help explain what we do and how we could work together. And I remember one of them saying like, are you licensed? And I was like, no, isn't that great? Because we can do all the things that you can't,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But it's a collaboration.
It is.
It's filling in some of the gaps that you're not able to do
Yep.
because of licensing restrictions and just like ethics.
Yeah.
This is what I love about working in the triad, is that so I can engage with the client
Mhm.
in a much more involved way and have you over not overseeing from like an I'm the authority, but from a bird's eye view, keeping an eye on how things are
Like,
going.
yeah, like a theoretical perspective too.
Yes.
Like keeping theory in mind on the clinician side. And also like I think in our dynamic too, like we looked out for each other and like we all looked out for the client. Like I think in our dynamic, like it wasn't like a bird's eye view. Like you were watching like me and the client interact. I was watching you and the client interact, and we were all looking out for each other. So I think
Mhm.
it's a very much a mutual thing that we had
Yeah.
going on. Like, we were a team.
When I first got into surrogate partner therapy, my impression of SPT was that it was a hierarchy,
No,
that I was gonna show up in the space. I know it's not now, but
that makes me sad.
I think at one time it was though, that I would show up and the therapist would tell me what to do,
N
right? "Today, I want you to do this with the client." And I would
no.
go, "Okay." But the reality is it's not been the case for many reasons. One, I think the industry has matured
Yeah.
and has become a much more robust modality because in the beginning when it started with Masters and Johnson, it was about specifically working on sexual dysfunction, right? You're gonna serve as the partner to the single man primarily. That's what they worked with heterosexual couples, and usually they were married couples, but when a single man came in, they brought in a woman so that they could do these exercises, which we call sensate focus,
Mhm,
right? And it was really about having a partner to do sensate focus with so that they could see that change the sexual dysfunction.
mhm,
And now it's not like that. We're there to work on like steps before that of like how do we show up in relationship in a way that creates all the safety that we need for a healthy sexual relationship or a healthy platonic relationship. This is like we're moving outside of just romantic relationship
mhm,
modeling. We're
mhm,
talking on a much bigger scale of just how to have healthy mature relationships that are autonomous
mhm,
and um fruitful, like growing together rather
mhm,
than tearing each other down or blaming. It's like self responsibility but then interdependence and all these rich things that make up a healthy relationship, whether it's with your mother or it's with your partner or it's
mhm,
with your child, right? We can come in and model those things, and that's where I see that the industry has changed a lot over the
mhm.
years and why things like the hierarchy is not there anymore. I'm never doing anything I don't want to do.
Yes.
Nobody can tell me how to interact with the client, right? It's more like, what do you think the client needs to work on?
Mhm,
How can we together come up with an idea of how we might be able to touch on that space that you're not able to touch on
mhm, mhm.
in your talk therapy space?
And something that you taught me that I really like and, like, the foundation of your work and, like, who you are as an individual too is, like, creating safety. Like, that's the number one thing, is, like, you create safety in every relationship that you have. And that's something, like, I think not a lot of people even think about. Like, safety is always number 1, and then everything else can come after that. Because once you have that safe, secure foundation, like, you can move in every direction that you want because you know that that foundation is safe and secure. And also,
Mhm.
I do think that, like, things have changed in our industry, but I do think that I see emails, and they bother me, and they still, like, remind me of that hierarchy. Like, people using the word sexual surrogate is, like, something I learned in Andrew's class was, like, no. And, like, as soon as, like, conversations around surrogate partner therapy and recognition of the work that you guys really do incredibly well. And I wish there was. Like, with every client, I think I'm like, "Oh my gosh, how could surrogate partner be therapy be helpful for this client?" And, like, I see different ways in which, like, it could be transformatory for clients.
Yeah. I have a question. When you use the word sex surrogacy, what do you think that was that because you didn't understand what the actual work was? Was it just
I
because it's
had
what's
no
been
idea.
said a lot? Like,
It's what's been said, and I had no idea what the work was like until I started working with you and I took Andrew's training. Like, honestly, we don't have a lot of training in surrogate partner therapy. I had never even heard of it, like, as a therapist until, like, a client came in and this is what they were looking for. And, like, that was years ago, of course, and, like, now, like, we're in the somatic sexuality group, like, it's very clear to me now, but, like, yeah, I didn't know what the work actually was, and I wasn't
Yeah.
trained on it, and I think that it needs to be more widespread, and people really need to understand what surrogate partner therapy is, because most people don't know what it is, and it's a
Yeah. When
shame.
we when we do
Go
the
ahead.
short version of like how do you explain what you do, right? Like what is surrogate partner therapy in just a couple words? Or and I don't know how to I always go to like who is it for? And it
Mhm.
is for people who struggle with emotional and physical intimacy.
Mhm.
In the most simplest way, that is like who it's for, but to try to describe how it affects people, like how the client interacts with it,
Yeah.
is a much bigger conversation.
Yeah, 'cause it expands in every direction of the client's life. Like, it's not just emotional and physical intimacy. Like, it's everything. You get to know that person holistically, and, like, it really changes the client's life
Yeah. I'm
on a
thinking
large
about
scale.
I'm thinking about how does it change the client's life? And the words that come to mind is like, well, first of all, I think self-worth changes,
Yeah, confidence.
confidence, um, competence.
Yep.
I mean, I think especially if you're somebody who hasn't had a lot of experience, if you walk through the world kind of with imposter syndrome all the
Mhm.
time, right? That I don't have the baseline experience that a lot of my peers have,
Yep.
it automatically makes you feel a certain way. Like
Yeah.
it just does. Sometimes that is like I have clients that have we think of this work around the sexual sphere, right? And I
Mhm.
work so hard to talk about it in a bigger sense. So I'm going to purposely kind of move away from that when I talk about this right now.
Mhm.
Um, we have people that feel like they've never experienced just affection.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
That
like we were talking about love, is,
Mhm.
like, clients really feel loved with you.
Yeah. I have a client right now that said, "I've never felt anyone cared for me as much as you do other than my parents."
Mm.
Like, awesome. I'm so glad that I get to be that person for you. And that's where I think having the triadic model can keep that from getting potentially muddy
Mhm.
because there could become a dependency.
Mhm.
And it's understandable.
Yeah.
But like when you have a goal, this is kind of the difference between cuddle therapy and surrogate partner therapy. When I try to define the differences, is that cuddle therapy can be looked at as just like maintenance, right? You go to your massage
Mhm.
therapist, you go to your Reiki practitioner, you go to your hairdresser. Like there's just things you do in life for upkeep, right? And
Mhm.
cuddling can be totally about upkeep. It can be, I just need this shot of attention, attunement, affection, and whoo, I'm off to the races. I'm good for another couple weeks or whatever your schedule is, right? But in the surrogate partner world, we are looking at a goal.
Mhm.
We are looking to help you learn to generalize how to how to take the skills in the growth that you're experiencing in surrogate partner therapy and translate them outside of the professional sphere.
Mhm.
And that's where I think having the therapist involved makes that a lot more clear.
Mhm.
And it's always great to have another set of eyes to see where we have to practice maybe some tough love at times,
Mhm.
to see where the client maybe has gotten maybe more comfortable than like they're not uncomfortable enough to where they'll go out and seek a organic non-professional relationship.
Mhm.
And that's where it's nice to have like a team
Yeah.
approach to say, okay, we both agree this is time. It's time that you start to integrate this into your
Yes.
personal life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
So
that
I
word. Integration.
Integrate, yeah.
Mhm.
If I could have my way, I mean, I do work that isn't triadic model,
Mhm.
um, for lots of reasons. Sometimes it's because the client just really has whatever barrier they have to working with a talk therapist. Maybe they've had negative
Mhm.
experiences in the past. I don't know. There's like lots of reasons. I am committed to supporting people, as long as we're both on the same page. But if I could wave my magic wand, I would only work triadic model. I would love
Mhm.
if everybody had the benefit of having that
Yeah.
supercharged experience, because I do think it's fantastic the work that can happen when you
Yeah.
have a trained professional to process what's going on in their work with me,
Mhm.
and not either trying to process it on their own or trying to process it with me, the person that's involved in it with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I only have so much ability to take myself out of it.
Mhm.
That's
And
the
therapists do too.
complication.
Yeah, like, we only have so much ability to take ourselves out of our relationship with the client too, and I also think, like, something we did was, like, it was like checks and balances. Like, you check my work with the client, I check yours too, and I really
Mhm,
appreciated that. Like, sometimes, like, I would get activated based on, like, a situation that would happen, and, like, we could talk to each other about
mhm.
the situation because you were dealing with the same thing, maybe in a different way, and I was dealing with the same thing, and how to tackle this issue together to help the client the best way that we can.
That is the beauty of community. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you it's one thing to have somebody you can talk to about your work. You may have a supervisor, a
Right.
colleague. To have someone that's working with the same person,
Yeah.
there's nothing like that,
Nothing.
because I think about, like, friendships. I have a girlfriend that I have known since elementary school. So she has known all of my family. She knows all of my background, and when I can just go to her and be like, "This thing happened," and she already knows all the stuff, right? She already has a really intimate relationship with my past. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
Something happens with us and our mutual client, it's like, "Oh, yeah, I don't have to explain the background.
Mhm.
It's just we're picking up, 'Oh, yeah. Oh, I could see that,' or
Yeah.
remember to think about," like, um, things like, we have to watch our boundaries because we
Mhm.
can want something more than our client wants it,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We have
That's
to work.
something I
Yeah,
learned with
we
you is I will want something more than my client wants to, and I think that's where you have to detach from the outcome.
Mhm. It's
Sorry.
a really good practice,
Interrupt.
and to have checks and balances,
Mhm.
between us was really helpful.
And
Um,
it helped me grow as a therapist too. Like,
yeah.
for all the other clients as well, like, learning not to work harder than my client was something that I learned in our triadic process, and I don't know if I would have learned it any other way.
Yeah, it's a great place to see that happen,
Yeah,
because I know I'm trying, and I'm not perfect at this, right? None of us are, but I'm trying to meet the client where they are.
yeah.
And there's something that I learned from my colleague Lou Hansen. She took a I think it was she took a class with Akila Riley Richardson around relational privilege.
Mm,
And the way it shows up in my work is that I come into work with relational privilege over my client, right? I come in with all these skills that my client is there to learn.
mhm,
And I have to remember that they don't already have them.
mhm.
They can't want something that they don't even know.
Yeah,
And so reminding myself to meet them where they are is something that I have to actively practice it.
yeah.
And I'm not 100% at it by any means.
I mean, me too. I'm the same way. Like, sometimes my brain goes like 100 miles an hour, and I'm already on, like, our mutual client, like, they told me, like, "You are on step 20 and I'm on step 1." And I'm like, "You're so right." Like, I get excited and I get, like, my brain starts running and running and running, and I remember that, like, I'm on step 20 and they're on step 1, and I've gotta go back to step 1. But I do
Yeah.
think it always comes from, like, the intention is always positive, and it's always, like, for growth for the client and, like, their
Mhm.
happiness too.
Yeah. And sometimes, we get to grow in the process, and that's,
Mhm,
like, a bonus. I'm thinking about, I know I had some of my own stuff come into play in our relationship with our mutual client, and
mhm,
it's happened with a few clients of mine where it's nice to have a place where I can go and say, "Hey, I noticed this personal part of my life pop
mhm.
up in this case." Like, just having a place to acknowledge that
Yeah,
work through it with someone so that I don't wanna say push that away in my work with the client, but there was a thing I heard years ago when I got started in cuddling about I need to do my own work so that I know what is my shit and what is not my shit and what is the
yeah.
client's shit, right? And, I think having somebody that can, help you catch those things
Mhm.
or question them, get curious, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think this feeling comes from? There's more going on because we have this relationship, this interesting laboratory kind of based relationship with the client where
Mhm.
we're practicing being in relationship, but it's ultimately for the client,
Yeah.
which is the difference I think between like an organic relationship where it's got to be mutually beneficial,
Mhm.
and I'm not there to work on my stuff.
Yeah. But it's gonna come up
That's
because
it's gonna come up.
yeah, and I think you are a very genuine and authentic person. You put your whole self into relationships. And like I love that about you. And like of course like your stuff is going to come up because like that's genuine and authentically you in that moment. Like you're not pretending to be anyone else
Yeah.
but you.
Yeah, and it's also but at the same time, it's acknowledging that that's not the client's problem, right?
Yeah.
Like, it is about, like, "Okay, how do I need to adjust myself?"
Yeah.
Right? How do I what maybe I this is practicing, great boundaries
Mhm.
and realizing when you need to make an adjustment.
Mhm.
"I thought I was gonna be a yes to this. Maybe I'm not a yes to this anymore."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's something I really appreciated too, like when we would meet with Brian Gibney and like we would discuss the case and we discuss like our own kind of things coming up is like he kind of put us in checks and balances too. Like I learned a lot from him. Like as like almost like a supervisor. He was kind of like the supervisor of our triadic model.
Yeah, he was kinda holding the container for all of us.
Yeah, and it was amazing because, like, I would react to something and I'd be like and he would be so good at pointing out, like, "Okay, wait, maybe this isn't the best look, like, where is this actually coming from?" And I'm like, "Wait a second, you are so right." So,
Yeah.
like, I enjoyed that part too, like, about him being your mentor and, like, he's awesome.
He is, and he also has that curious mind that
Mhm.
is he's really good at slowing things down and asking
Yes.
great questions.
Great questions.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
I look at that as a model to where I strive to work towards is getting that goes back to that being more comfortable with asking questions.
Mhm.
It's because of the people like him that
Mhm.
I watch ask really great questions that really, in this like, almost like a graceful dance. It's like they know what they're doing, and I don't know if like, he does that really well. My husband does this really well too, where they'll just ask the right question, and I'm like, "Fuck, how did you know how to do that?" And
Yeah.
then sometimes, I mean, in true disclosure, sometimes, at least my husband, ask a completely terrible question that sends me into a spiral. So I don't wanna say anybody does this
Yeah.
100% well all the time, but, um, Brian Gibney, the fact that he offered me mentorship when I moved to the East Coast was just the best gift I ever got, and the fact that it keeps growing to, like, it's a gift that other people get to benefit from because
Mhm.
I've had him mentor my cases. Um, it's not just that he's helping me, he's helping you, the clinician that's working with
Mhm.
me. Ultimately, it's helping the client. It's
Mhm.
helping our industry. It's helping grow like a little army of clinicians that are comfortable doing this work
Mhm.
so that they
Yeah.
can start to offer it to their clients.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
really love that. Like, I love the community that, like, you brought me into. Like, you invited me to the somatic sexuality group, and, like, I went and I met, like, a whole host of different individuals and, like, learned so much from them, and also Brian and Lou and Andrew. Like, you really brought me into the space, and I just, like, was like a sponge, like, soaking everything
Yeah.
up. It was awesome.
It's
It still
community. It's an
is.
interesting family. Like,
Yeah.
we're all better for being together,
Mhm.
you know? Yeah. I'm looking, I have some questions. We already covered that you learned about surrogate partner therapy from your new client making the request, right? That's
Yeah.
really what he was looking for, was a therapist that would be willing to work with. In
Yeah.
this case, it was me specifically because I had kind of
Mhm.
adopted his case as a possibility. And he did all the legwork as far as finding a therapist that would consider collaboration. Without giving identifying details, do you have any idea why, like, could you explain why you thought, as you learn, because I know you didn't take this to the client as a thing I think you should do. The client came to you, but
Mhm.
once you took Andrew's class, can you say why you thought the client was appropriate for at least our version of SPT? We did it a little bit modified, but why do you think he was appropriate for it?
I mean, the client was a perfect fit for SPT because there was specific things and trauma that the client had gone through that couldn't be um, worked out in a normal relationship. Like, he really had to have the container of safety and surrogate partner therapy in order to work through some of the things that he was going through. So, like, for example, like a specific phobia of
Mhm.
like bodies. So that is something that, like, we even can't do in therapy. Like, I cannot show him pornography in therapy. Like, I cannot get undressed in therapy. So, like, how are we supposed to deal with a specific phobia of human bodies without, like, a surrogate partner? And I
I
think
mean,
that,
I was just gonna say, I mean, you can send people out with homework, but they're still on their own to do that, and that isn't safe.
and, like, even, like, we've had discussions about the ethics of, like, okay, what kind of homework do I send? Like, and I've had conversations with my ASEX supervisor, Tamara Pincus, about, like, okay, like, what are the ethics about, okay, I'm choosing the erotic material for the client to see because if he just goes on Pornhub and all these ads pop up, that's going to send him into a panic attack. So, like, I think that it's really hard because, like, that's not really safe. And also to just let them go off and, like, do whatever, like, I think that does more harm than good. So, like, it
Mhm.
is important to have the container of SBT and also to work on the relational stuff. Like, I think it would be too much for just someone that you're dating to handle. Like, way too much.
I would question the person that would say yes to doing all of that
I would too.
work. I was that person. I
Mm,
mean, I would make I would take on these relationships of, here's how I can help them
yeah.
get better at, I mean, I'm in one now. He's come a long way. As I've said, I won't do this for free again. But um
Well,
I
mutually
had a
beneficial.
codependent. Yeah, I had, well, it was, but I came into the relationship with such a codependent
Yeah.
streak that I look at it now and I'm like, "Oh, Michelle, like, bless your heart. You wanted to be loved so badly that you would do anything to make it work."
Mm,
And I think, like, somebody who will take some of this stuff on inside a partnership, I gotta ask, like, unless, like, it's something that comes up once you've established a relationship and, life changes and we go through hard times and things like that, we have to be willing to support our
mhm,
partner in maybe some limited ways sometimes.
mhm,
But if I I'm just like, if you're out there trying to date and you just really don't have a baseline idea of how to really interact with another person, how to consider like the other person's experience, how is it to be in relationship with me?
Mhm.
Am I able to self-reflect and take accountability without being um activated? Like all
Mhm.
these things that we don't start out there. We learn a lot of these things as we grow older and mature and
Mhm.
step in it, right?
Yeah.
But for some people, they're really stuck and they're not able to move forward to even get into the relationship to work these things out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's
It's
exactly what would have happened. Like they can't get into the relationship to work it out. And then they're stuck in that like vicious cycle. And I also think it's like a self defeating cycle too. It's like, oh, I'm this way, but I can't do this. And like they really are trapped in that negative headspace and negative emotions and not able to move
yeah.
out of it.
I've had a couple clients that are also doing EMDR work.
Oh.
And from what I understand is that they need some positive experiences to pull from in that space.
Hmm.
And so sometimes my work has been used to try to help create some of those spaces that they can tap into.
Wow.
Um, so
I love that.
that's it's
I
good to
mean,
I don't know.
it's
How can I
definitely
be of
something
service? You know what I mean?
I use in my work is like going back to like that positive experience the client had with you and just like expounding on it. Like, look at how far you've come in a year or two. You did things that
Mhm.
you never thought you would be able to do. And I think that gives them a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know anybody who comes through the work that doesn't have a file folder worth of those experiences
Yeah.
to be able to say, like, you started off in this spot and this goal was a far off. A lot of times we have to
Hmm.
start with micro goals
Yeah.
because we can't even see what the long term goal is because it feels so out of reach.
Yeah.
And then we start to make smaller goals and then it like just keeps snowballing, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
super powerful.
Yeah. It's amazing.
When you considered surrogate partner therapy, when this was brought up by this client, did you have concerns?
Honestly, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into.
Like you
I
didn't know what you
certainly
didn't know. So,
I didn't know what I didn't know, and I always like to approach things with like curiosity and like positivity. So I was like, okay, like I'm going to do some research as to what this is. And I think we talked first, and
hmm
you told me to do Andrew's training, and like
hmm
I did it, and then like I was like, wow, this,
and
and we didn't.
you had a supervising therapist that was also had a positive like view of SPT. Yes, I mean Tamara.
Tamara and I, yes, Tamara. I at the time I was a resident, so I had another supervisor who was not a sex therapist who didn't really know that much about SPT.
Okay.
But I did have Tamara Pincus as my supervising sex therapy supervisor, and she is a yes, and she is very pro SPT, which was very helpful too. But honestly, like it was our work that changed. Like that was kind of like later on, but it was our work that really changed, not changed, but developed my view on SPT and how it can really change a person's life.
Thank you. I'm glad that you
Yes,
took a chance, that you were curious.
as
Um,
always.
yeah. Um, here, I mean, maybe this is just oversimplified, but I feel like what is the like if it ended up not being a good fit, we could end the work at any time, right?
Hmm.
Like I guess there's always that risk that I don't know, if you don't know your practitioner, I suppose there could be this risk of setting the client back. But
Yeah.
I think this comes down to we need to educate clinicians that it's available, but also how to how to choose a practitioner to work
Hmm.
with,
Yeah.
and not just because you like the person and you've connected well with them, but is this a good person for your client? Like,
Yeah,
it's not just about it's like having a team of people,
it
and
is.
surrogate partner therapy is not widely available. There's not a ton of us,
Mm-mm.
and we're all spread out all over the country, and I my dream one day is that, Vanessa, you have a handful of surrogates that you have worked with, not just that and I
Mhm.
know you know a handful at this point just because I've
Mhm.
connected you with enough of us, but that you've worked with them and you can say, "Oh, this client would be a great fit for this surrogate."
Oh, yeah,
Right? That
like,
we
I
have
know.
such yeah, that we have such a
Yeah.
a a rich, deep, group of people to pull from that you could
Mhm.
really dial it in more effectively. Like, for me, I sometimes get people I'll have, therapists or other surrogates or whoever refer to me, and they'll say, "Oh, they need somebody with really good boundaries. Michelle will be great for that." Or they need somebody who is really compassionate. Michelle will be great for that.
Yeah.
Like, I think of those as the things that I bring to the table. Um, and I'm sure we all have our different strengths.
Mhm.
And so, like, my dream, one day you'll have a whole little Rolodex
I would
on your
love that.
team of people you pull from. Um, the last question on my pre-prepared list is, um, were you and the client pleased with the results?
I mean, I honestly don't think I honestly don't think my client or I ever expected what happened between, like, the 3 of us. Like, I never expected to become part of, like, a somatic sexuality professional group. I never expected to have a group of, like, insanely amazing and intelligent surrogate partners that, like, I can go and talk to at any point. And for my client, I honestly do not think he would have ever been able to have a regular relationship without you. Like,
Mm,
are we pleased? Like, we couldn't I couldn't have dreamed of a better outcome.
yeah. I
Like,
mean, I have a lot of love for our client,
yeah,
and it was challenging. I will
I know.
not sugarcoat this. This was a challenging we had to pivot a lot
Mhm.
in our work together. It was not the usual course. I think I mentioned that earlier. It was a bit
Yeah.
modified. Um, and in the end, I felt a lot of satisfaction.
I mean, the client said, "I love you," and he's never said that to anyone in
Yeah.
our termination
Yeah.
session. Like, it was really a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I think at
I
one point
hold
I
him
started crying. It was just
I think you
so
told me
emotional.
I think you kept it together on our triadic meeting of no, like, our
Yeah.
termination call, but I think I remember you sending me a text where he was opening up to you.
Mhm.
Like, everybody kinda kept it together when it was the 3 of us,
Yeah.
and then, if I remember correctly, I remember getting a text from you that's like, "And I'm crying now." Like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
because it was just so beautiful.
that's a thing that is such a gift to our clients, though, is
Mhm.
sharing that emotion, whether they're in it like, whether they're crying with us or they're just seeing us emote.
Yeah.
I used to be very like, like, "Is this a bad thing? Should I not should I try to figure out how to hold this back? Because 'Cause I'm really not good at it." Like,
Mhm.
I spent so many years not letting myself cry or not even be able to tap into the desire to cry. I'd have to, like, if I felt this need, almost like the blue balls of the eyes maybe, like, I would watch a sad movie to get the tears out of my body, and, after I got divorced, the floodgates opened, and I
Mhm.
can't really control it, and I don't want to really control it, but I
Mhm.
really questioned if it was good for the client or not, and
Yeah.
what I can say now, I guess 7 plus years into working directly with people is it is so good for the client.
Mm.
All the feedback I've gotten was like, "You were in it with me. You shared this thing with me. We
Yeah.
connected on this." In a way that brought tears to your eyes, whether were tears of
Mhm.
joy or grief or I have tears for lots of reasons.
Mhm.
It's so good to model that.
Mhm.
So,
It is
yeah.
good to model that. I think Therapists have this discussion all the time. It's like an ethical debate. Like, is it okay to cry with clients? And like, will a client feel like they are taking care of you if you cry? And I think at some points it is, and some points it's
Mhm.
not. And I think for some clients it's okay, and other clients it might not be okay.
Yeah, I've held
Yeah.
back. Um, one earlier this year, it was a brand new client, and he came to cry. Like that was his goal
Mm,
that day, was to have a place to just like let shit go.
yeah.
And um the thing, he knew what would help him get there, and one of
Mhm.
those things was to listen to some sad songs
Mm,
that bring up tears for him. And we were reading lyrics and listening to songs together.
mhm,
And he picked a song that tapped on some of my old stuff,
mhm,
and I fought it back. I think I might have had a trickle run down my face, but I did
mm,
not let him know, because we didn't have enough of an established understanding of what it means to not take care of each other.
yeah.
Right? Like, when people come in for cuddling, we have an agreement that, we're gonna take care of ourselves. That
Mhm,
if we're uncomfortable, we're gonna do something to change it, but we're not there to, like, caretake each other.
yeah.
It's, just one of our agreements, and when I have a client that's been established, those tears feel very different in that space than what I feared would happen with that client, which was that it
Mm,
would take the attention off of him and it would put it
mhm,
on me, and that's not what the goal of our time was together.
mhm.
Having an established client where I share that with them is just a very different
Yeah,
experience for everybody involved.
it
So,
is. It's
yeah,
raw and
it's
it's
like a
real.
maturing it's like a maturing of the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I love that.
Oh,
Mm.
this has been such a lovely birthday gift to me, Vanessa.
This is amazing. I'm so glad, Michelle. You deserve to be celebrated. The work you do is beyond. Like, I can't even explain it. It's so incredible and it's so juicy. It's so connective. It's so vulnerable. And it's so safe. And I think that, like, you deserve to be celebrated for the work. And I think all surrogate partners do too.
Yeah, I think for my birthday wish this year is, um, to expand what surrogate partner therapy means.
Yeah.
Like, I want surrogate person,
Surrogate
a
person.
stand-in person
Yeah.
to work through relational wounding.
Yeah.
That would be, if I could change, if I got to rewrite the history of
Be
surrogate
surrogate
partner
partner.
therapy. Surrogate person, stand-in person,
Hmm.
like, it's about, like, just we need a safe person to experience life with,
We do.
whatever that life part is, whether it's just being in attunement, like,
Hmm.
think of, like, childhood
Hmm.
and the bonding of mother child, right? And the sharing of their nervous system, and the building of those neurons around, like, oxytocin receptors. Like, I can get real geeky about this, right? And break it down to,
Hmm.
like, the minimal science of, like, connection.
Hmm.
We need some of those baseline experiences that we didn't get,
We do.
whether
It's
we're
like
adults or
reparenting.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
The reparenting by committee. You did read the book Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving, right? Or did you start it?
Did I have I think I might have the workbook. I might not have the actual book, but I
Okay.
have the workbook and I've done the workbook.
Okay. So you understand reparenting by committee,
Yeah.
and that you're one of the committee members, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
As well as other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes you're the client's first person in that
Mhm.
committee,
Mhm.
if they've got a really, like, if they haven't figured out how to build community
Yeah.
yet, and they maybe, we break away from our families of origin sometimes because they're just not good for us.
Mhm.
And we have to kind of set a new baseline. And that's how I see the work, is like we're resetting the baseline.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah.
Resetting the baseline. That is a good way.
Yeah. Now to figure out how to write and talk about this stuff. It's so hard to put it in, like, what
It's
do you
so
do?
hard. Cuz like I think if you don't see it, you don't truly understand it too. Like you can
Yeah.
conceptualize it, but like once you see it, you can't unsee it and unfeel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you sometimes will be like, I think I have this client. At least when I still lived on the East Coast, it was like, I think I have this client that'd be great for you.
Oh, I have
Right.
a
And
lot of clients that would be great for you if only you lived on the East Coast still. But
yeah. Well, if they can do intensives, little
I
like
know.
shorter period intensives, which isn't for everybody. I mean, honestly, I haven't experienced a lot of my clients that could do that.
Mm-hmm.
They really need
Work.
the
Yeah.
slower work. But,
Mm,
either way, I still get to call you a colleague and a friend, whether we get to share a
yeah.
client again or not. I appreciate you being in my world. Thank you for playing in my intimacy lab today.
Thank you so much for having me on such a special day too.
I'm sure you'll be back because
Sure.
I know we could talk about stuff.
Probably all
Um,
day. We could like fill the whole day with
w-
this.
One day we're going to be in person.
I hope sooner
You're
than
one of those
later.
people that I'm like, I can't believe we haven't met yet.
I like feel like we have though. Like
I
it,
know. Well, guess what? From experience, when we do meet, we're going to be like, I can't believe this is the first time we're doing this.
yeah, it's gonna feel
Because,
like we've done this for years.
yeah, it happens
Yeah.
to me every conference. I'm
Really?
like, I hug someone and I go, wait, this is the first time we're hugging.
Yeah.
It feels so like I have known some of you guys for a really long time, and
Hmm.
it's 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 cool that sometimes we do get to cross
Hmm.
paths, and I look forward to the first time that we get to do that. So
I'm super excited. I look forward to that
thanks for
day.
coming on. Vanessa, how can people find you? I know, you said where you work. Like, are you like whether you're
Yes,
taking clients, all that
I
kind of
am
stuff?
accepting new clients. I have a website. It's just cushingcounseling.com. Psychology Today. Instagram. It's just Cushing Counseling. Nothing too
We'll
much.
put the links in the show notes, and
Thank you.
thanks for getting intimate with me. I don't know what my tagline is for this, but thanks for
Thank
sharing
you.
intimacy with me, Vanessa.
Thank you for letting me be a part of your intimacy
Yes,
and sharing it
absolutely.
with me.
All right. We'll
Thank you,
talk again
Michelle.
soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to comment, pose a question, or learn more about the guests often featured on the show, visit us at intimacylabpodcast.com. Please also take a moment to review us on your favorite podcast app. It's one of the best ways to show your support. As for me, you can find out more about my work at meetmichellerenee.com, as well as on most social medias at meetmichellerenee. Let's connect again soon.